opinion. Unwarranted music opinion. I don't care if you don't want to hear my opinion about your robot.
Welcome to the final episode of Unwarranted Music Opinions. This is an episode quite different than any other that we have recorded before. I'm Jacob Lindberg.
Give me your sleeve. I gotta wipe my eyes.
I'm trying to introduce you. I'm Jacob Lindberg. I'm here with Brian Courtney.
Stop crying, Chaz.
And Chaz Jenkins.
Hey.
And like I said, this is not an episode where we have chosen an album and we're reconvening and we're discussing them. We are discussing basically everything that we have chosen up to this point.
But we are doing an album, too. I picked Tekashi's Graduation, so what'd you guys think?
I mean, I didn't think I was going to hear anything better than Embracism. But, you know, I love having my mind blown twice.
We are going to discuss our bottom five, our 5 least favorite albums that we've heard, and we're going to have some honorable mentions for our favorites, and then we all have a top 10 favorites list. Now, this top 10 list has some rules that go along with it. We can't be choosing albums that we picked, obviously. I know that I'm not going to choose an album that I had heard before the podcast, with like one exception.
Some of my highest rated are Deceits of This Heat and Beastie Boys.
I tried not to pick any easy picks.
So those are in Spiderland as well, was one that if I had rated high, I wouldn't have picked, just because those are classics. Those are very well known. I would have heard them at some point. I actually ended up doing the same thing for Kraftwerk's The Man Machine, a record I considered for the honorable mentions or the top 10, because it was very good, but I consider that a classic and one I would have heard eventually.
Mm-hmm. We're going to mention our top 5 worst, kind of give a description of what we think, give our honorable mentions, kind of mention like why they didn't make the list or why we felt the need to mention them. And then our top 10, we're just going to, one at a time, each mention our 10 spot, 9 spot, 8 spot, so on and so forth.
Just talk about them as necessary.
Then when we get to 5, that's when we're going to let loose and just rave and rave why we picked them.
This is going to be pretty indulgent.
It's a circle jerk.
I like the concept, though, because I think what we've done here is a really interesting practice in listening to music, and I think that more people should do it. You know, if you want to discover new music and you have a friend who really enjoys music, say, hey, recommend me something, throw me something my way that I might not have ever heard, or that might be from a genre that I'd never listened to. Because I think we've all discovered music that we almost certainly would never have heard without this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
That we all love.
Especially towards the latter half. I think we've really thrived. Like, it took a while to get my footing personally, as it does with most things I do. But, like, at the end of the day, this is, like, a net positive. And, like, the fact that I have to, like, go out on my own for at least the next, like, little bit and, you know, hear stuff on my own again out of my own interest is, like, almost weird.
You know, getting really, really detailed and becoming like an expert in certain genres that are your favorites. But I think doing this for the amount of time that we did was really cool and really enjoyable. Although there were times when it was very not enjoyable.
Let's just air it out. Let's just get all the bad feelings out of the way.
Through the whole way, it's going to be Jacob first, Brian next, and then me last.
So I had 6...
No, don't do it! No! No!
I had 6 albums that I rated 4 or lower. 5 of them are making this list. 1 of them got away. The 5th worst album I think that I heard, for me personally, is Explosions in the Sky with All of a Sudden I Miss Everyone.
Ooh, recent.
By the time I got done with my last listen of this album, I was just annoyed. I don't think that it's not absolutely terrible. I don't hate it. And there are some individual songs and moments that are really solid. But like I said when we talked about it, it's lessened some of its parts because it just becomes so predictable by the end that it's hard to get through it, honestly. It's like having the exact same song played over and over and over and over, and it just became very, very boring. Number 4 is a throwback to the very first episode, Nicki Minaj with Queen. Some really good songs on this, honestly. If she had taken away a third of this album, because it's 66 minutes long. It's long. It's got tons of filler. She showed promise. That's why it's a 4 and not a 3. But really, it was long and it was a slog and a half. Number 3 is an album that we've joked about ever since we first talked about it. Diet Sig, Swear I'm Good at This. I swear you're not good at this, Diet Sig. Is just
have mercy.
Diet Sig was just, to me, it was a very faint shadow of some of my favorite indie pop and twee pop and indie rock bands. Had some energy to it that I appreciated and had an ethos that I like, but I don't think that what they were going for really panned out on the album. I did really dislike that album. Like, I hate some of the songs. But to be fair, it isn't structured in a way that is, like, it kind of flows. It has some quieter moments to break up the louder moments. Can't say that about number 2. Number 2 is Deadmau5 with album title Goes Here, which flows worse than a compilation album.
Damn!
Pound for pound, track by track, it's probably not as bad as Diet Sig, and probably not even as bad as Nicki Minaj, even though there are some really low lowlights on it. It's just the fact that it's so long, and the way it's structured is so monotonous. It's like without there's any thought put into it whatsoever. And it just became, you could probably fit in almost 3 listens of Diet Sig in this one album in the same exact runtime. And that's why it's lower than Diet Sig, because just the thought of listening to it. So that's number 3. I gave the number 1 album a 1 when we talked about it, but I think I'm at like a light to decent 2 at the moment.
Okay.
Because I do hate it, but it's a level of extreme apathy rather than like a passionate hatred. I just care so little. It's not like I'm gonna put forth that much energy into hating this, and I feel like that's what I would reserve a 1 out of 10 for. Obviously, no contest, no question, it's Seether with Finding Beauty in Negative Spaces. We ranted until we were out of breath during the episode we talked about this. Absolutely just mind-numbing. The worst aspects of grunge amplified. Vocals that made me want to rip my ears off. Lyrics that were the equivalent of edgy middle school prose writing about how... It's hard to even talk about.
It's like he just discovered atheism.
It's so... It was absolutely just... It was the only album throughout the entire show that I listened to twice because I didn't want to give it another listen before the show. Like, I made sure every album that I've listened to for the show, 3 listens minimum. This album didn't get that. I broke my number 1 rule because it's that terrible. Yeah, so that's my bottom 5. Luckily, there's only one other album.
It's good to know that I only made it on twice. So.
There's only one other album that was lower than a 5, and that means that out of everything we listened to, the vast majority was positive. The other album was Teletubbies, the album.
God, I forgot.
But I decided that it doesn't deserve a spot on the absolute bottom 5 because of just how unique it is. And I really appreciate that album for what it is, even if I don't want to come back to it. And even though it has some absolutely baffling moments, there are some great ambient cuts on it. Clouds is legitimately a really beautiful moment. I admire that album. Even though the album itself, I don't like it. I think that it's not very fun to listen to. I can look at that album, and compared to every other album on this bottom 5, it's got a lot more ambition.
Hat.
I should not have talked about that album.
Hat.
You don't like that cowbell? Damn. All right, top 5 worst. Shout out Joe Lewis. Number 5 is LeBrock's Real Thing. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Just boring. Offensively boring. At least it's short. But it's just an album that I just don't get the appeal. I think the sounds are kind of... It sounds okay, but the sounds are kind of trite and drawn out. The songs here are long. This album's not even necessarily bad. It plays more like an EP, really. I'm just not into it. It bores me. Even if it's aware of its own cheesiness, it does come off as, like, completely cheesy. Like, it makes me just swear off dairy the moment I see it.
Nice.
You know, it kind of just rounds out the list. It's really not horrible or anything. I just don't feel anything. Where I start to feel really bad about myself. Frank Black, Teenager of the Year.
Thank God somebody put this on their list. What a shitty
This is like
album.
yacht rock. This is bad. And like, not that it sounds like what is described as like dad rock and quote, but like this is like the music that people who listen to dad rock would make. And it's just so awful.
I think that's a bit much for this. Isn't my time. You know.
I agree.
It's just too long. It's just too long.
It's
That's
really
it.
long, but like
But it's
also
unforgettable. It's forgettable.
Yeah, I can remember like maybe 2 songs in this hour's
I
worth
can remember
of
one
material.
song, and it's the
I remember
opener.
having to listen to this over and over again. And it was just continually getting worse. Like I was really reaching for like, why do I like this song? I don't like most of them. The playing is uninteresting except for a few songs. I think it's kind of catchy at points, but that's like 3 songs, and we're talking like 15 tracks. This will not paint how I think of the Pixies when I go to listen to them.
It's so different.
But this is awful. And maybe I'm using the language is a bit too strong for how much I dislike the album, but like I really would never want to listen again. I have no desire to go back. I do dislike it. At the time it was like a light 5, but it's like a 4 territory now. Like it's just complete displeasure. Number 3, Dead Mouse. Album title goes here.
Classic.
I'm kind of just with Jacob. If I had to listen to this again, I'd probably write my note. Like, it's really bad. And
not that bad.
It's an hour of useless B-sides, uninteresting, run-of-the-mill electronic music that the closest that anyone should come to dancing to this is when maggots wriggle on a corpse. It's awful. It's just so... And, like, the lows are bad. That
the
vocalist...
song with what's his name?
Gerard Way.
Gerard Way.
It's pretty bad.
That's like a nightmare song.
Unbelievably bad. It's not the Velt. It's the other. It's something
No,
else.
Professional griefers.
Yeah, it's so bad.
So many-
Holy
and
crap.
But it's so funnily bad.
And one of the things about this, every song is so long, and none of them justify the length.
Maybe the first track. I thought the first track
F and
was
Pig
decent.
justifies the length, I
I
think.
just don't, like 7 minutes? Oh my God. Boots, boot. No, thank you. It's awful. Worse, I agree with basically all your thoughts on it. Like, worse than the sum of its parts. Basically, no memorable songs. And
That's, oh, come on.
way too
There's
long.
a few memorable tracks in there, for better or for worse.
There are 2 records worse than that one, though, and I hate these the most. Number 2, Lou Reed, Metal Machine Music. Look, I got a lot of respect for Lou Reed because I think the amount of respect he receives for his innovation, being ahead of the curve, is deserved. And like just seeing like how much there is, it must be, you know what I mean? It's like when seeing how everyone praises T-Pab and says it's all great, everyone's like Lou Reed, Lou Reed, Lou Reed. I'm like, okay, there must be something to this. It's not this record, because this is 4 tracks, about 15 minutes apiece. Man, it's harsh noise music. I get the appeal, but I am not
it's an
being
hour long of a loop.
I am not being appealed to. There are little
Not a loop.
There's little
We
shots of
determined during the episode that it's not a loop.
Each cut is unique.
I don't know. Tilden's opinion is pretty.
And the shots of feedback are like there's some moments in there, but really when I'm listening I just want to die. Like it's just so exhaustingly abrasive, and I don't really get maybe why it's forward thinking. Like maybe I could see it. I kind of get
it's 100% forward thinking.
I get the artistic statement he's making as well, I guess, because with the context.
I actually
of,
think that album is track by track good. It's just the fact it's so long.
I just really don't like it. It's just not for me, you know. And maybe it is groundbreaking in some ways and stuff, but that doesn't mean it's good. Doesn't mean I have to like it. You know, it's not groundbreaking and it's awful. By far, the worst record I've had to hear for the show. I've only hated it more. Every time I talk about it, I get so mad. Like, I just am overwhelmed.
Come on,
Diet Sig. I swear I'm good at this. Jesus Christ. Where do I even start? It's trite. It's boring. It's fake. It's surface level.
Pouring her heart out, man.
It's, you know, what is awful about this record? The lyrics... It doesn't sound awful. I mean, you know, it's pretty tolerable. I can certainly listen to it. Like, honestly, if I had to listen to it again, I would rather listen to this maybe than Metal Machine Music. But when I'm listening to this, I hate it so much more because it's just so trite. This album came out, like, within the last 2 years. And this is, like, my idea of the worst kind of music that I could be listening to because it says basically nothing. It's not as bad as Seether, but really, for me, it's not a far cry. It's just a different genre. You know, maybe a couple of moments I originally thought were kind of cute on this thing. No. And
Apricots.
I hate pretty much every song here. Not a single song
Why
I
do you
like.
hate Bath Bomb? You like that track?
No, not anymore. And the worst one is like Bed Slug. What is that song called? That song makes me Blob Zombie. Hate that song. That is the worst, most, and it defines why the album is so bad because she is just so apathetic and not in like a constructive trying to love myself kind of way. It's literally like she's just saying that she's lazy, and it shows because it's just unbearably trite. It's just the amalgamation of someone who's heard a lot of music that they identify with, but that was in middle school and they haven't heard anything else. I hate this. I hate that album so much.
All right.
It stunts growth. Like
All right.
it just.
All right, bitches. Number 5, Daughters. What a
I knew they wouldn't make it. I was so.
What an absolutely pretentious pile of garbage. I know it was a light 6, but I was thinking about it, like, what were my other 6s? It doesn't go
Yeah,
too...
you giving it a 6, I was like, no way.
But it's lower. Like, I'd rather listen to Die Lit. I'd totally rather listen to Sat 1. Daughters is trite. And it all comes down to Less Sex, a fucking stupid song that does not belong there. The rest of the album is okay. It's not for me.
That's like the worst critique. That is like the worst. That's like someone trying to be... It's okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I appreciate this even though I enjoyed the album.
Yeah. Number 4 is Elbow.
Son of a bitch.
Look, more power to you guys. I don't get it, though. Like, it's... It's pretentious, it's long, it's overblown, it's so full of itself. The vocalist is just too annoying to me.
I want to beat the shit out of you.
But lyrically, it's pretty good. Number 3 is Queen, Nicki Minaj. Yeah. Long as hell. Pretty...
I just wanted to see if you guys would commit.
Yeah.
I
I know, but just... Someone needed to come in with a chainsaw and just cut that up, like, because like the best tracks are like few and far between.
I love Jacob's critique of like, if you just removed most of the record.
Number 2 is Seether. I mean, what else can be said? So I had to think long and hard about this because there is one album that I've listened to for the show, and it's Not on the Moon. There's an album that I listened to for this show that the thought of coming back to it...
And did you revisit it?
I did.
Oh, I know
The
what it is.
thought of listening to it, I'd rather listen to Elbow 4 times in a row. I'd rather listen to Seether, because at least Seether I get some laughs out of it. My number 1 pick is The Miller's Daughter. Just the most boring, just trite album.
Trite? No. You are not allowed to use the word trite in this situation. That is not the word you are allowed to use.
It's just a slog and a half.
This is. I feel like you did this specifically to make me angry.
No, I truly feel that way.
He talked about this leading up to. I did not think it would be the worst.
I am shocked and appalled, and I need you to repent your sins.
Sorry, Father, for I've sinned. Jacob, I'm sorry, but it's true. It's just not
I-
that good.
Where's On the Moon?
You'll see. No, it's not that good.
Oh, okay.
But you'll see.
Number 1.
That's my top 5.
All right, now that we've aired it out, all the negativity. I feel like we're in. Let's
Hey, I had to
than
sit through you.
Seether.
I had to sit through you shitting on Died Sig and Deadmau5 twice in a row.
Well, maybe don't pick such bad fucking records. Damn, have better taste. You've shown that you have better taste. Let's talk about honorable mentions. So these
Kick
aren't
us off, Jacob.
These aren't necessarily records that are. Some of these are records that could have made the top
Like
10.
couldn't make the list, or just we have to mention them because
like records that are
as
worth
Jacob put it,
mentioning.
like it was cool that we listened to them.
Yeah, I want to see what commonalities we have between each of us for these because this is probably.
we probably have a few.
We
for
can
sure.
gauge the top 10. We can gauge the worst, but I want to see what like was close for you guys. I think that would be interesting.
So
Jacob, I apologize, but kick us off.
what-
these were not all necessarily close to being top 10. Some of them weren't even really albums that I thought were very, very good. But overall, I thought that they were all albums that I'm really glad that we were forced to listen to, and I thought that the experience of talking about them was very worthwhile. So number 1, I would say, well, these aren't ordered. So Reinventing Axl Rose by Against Me. I thought it was a really fun album.
Yes.
Really strong punk release. I didn't absolutely love it, but it was just consistently really fun. It had a lot of energy, a lot of emotion, a lot of depth in the lyrics. I gotta give a shout out to Playboy Carti with Die Lit, which was a very unique take on trap rap with its dreaminess. And,
It has
and
grown on me a little bit.
It's a great record,
had
man.
some, honestly, some really solid songs on it. Like
Yes.
Shuda was such a good song. Such a
I'm
good
so-
song.
What's
I
the song with Lil Uzi Vert?
That's Shuda.
Yeah, she was
Oh my
fire.
god, that makes me so
Great,
happy.
great song. Death Cube K. AKA Buckethead with Dreamatorium, an album I did not think was going to be very good, and it actually turned out to be a really solid, noisy drone album with some very unexpected moments, including like an industrial, angry, like frightening
I think it's
Terror
just called
by
Terror.
Night.
Yeah,
and
Terror
then you
by
have
Night.
the kind of Maggot Brain-esque guitar solo. It just was a cool album, and I didn't absolutely love it. It really showed some ambition, and I enjoyed listening to it. Another album that I didn't absolutely love but showed a lot of ambition was Lou Reed, Metal Machine Music, which I actually enjoyed
You loved it out of
by
the
bit.
Yeah, you loved it out of the most.
Do you think you enjoy it more now?
No. I still think that the length really brings this thing down, but if it was half its length, I mean, I could justify giving this thing a 7. Like, I thought that the ideas here, musically, were really solid, and I enjoyed listening to this thing while it was on. I just don't understand the need to make it as long as it was. I gave it a 5. I would still stick at like a strong 5. I'm just really glad that I gave this thing a shot because its reputation is so much more negative that forming my own opinion about it I thought was valuable. And then one more, Tierra Whack with Whack World.
Oh,
little
not
15-minute hip-hop album. Super enjoyable, fun, quirky, cool lyrics, cool beats. It was just an overall really fun time. I re-listened to it. It didn't bump up to an 8, but it still has so many memorable moments and tracks. Despite being a minute long each, they all had a cool flavor to them. So that's all of my honorable mentions.
We have like none in common. Mine are totally different.
You didn't.
Now that being
you
said,
didn't name a single one that's on my list.
Now that
That's
being
crazy.
said, you've heard a lot of the records I'm going to mention here. I think first, both Ween records we talked about, Godween Satan and 12 Golden Country Greats. I actually think I like 12 Golden Country Greats more than the debut. I think the debut is still great. Still, I love it as it's like the ultimate throw things at the wall and see what sticks. But they're both just so enjoyable, and I could see myself becoming a huge Ween fan down the line.
Oh, you will. Once you listen to Mollusk.
He hasn't even heard like Chocolate and Cheese, Mollusk, The Pod,
If
White
I like these
Pepper.
records this much, I
These
mean,
are like
he's
the
gonna love Pure
These are
Guava,
the
though.
outliers in Ween's discography. And
this
he's
is
already
like
loving them.
above and beyond. So, I think they're great starts. I don't think, maybe you start with the greats, but I think it's only going to be more rewarding to go to them from here.
I can't wait to see what you think of Pure Guava, though. Come back to me when you listen to that. That's like the test for a Ween fan, I think.
Next up, Primus, Seas of Cheese. Yeah, I went back to this record. Really good. It's one of the most difficult records I've had to listen to for the show because it just takes so long to sift through.
Crazier than John Zorn, though?
Not crazier than John Zorn, but certainly once you get comfortable with the riffs, like the bass riffs, and kind of learn them and learn how...
They're just groovy in their own weird way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a crazy kind of groove, and once you take the time, it just needed more time, and I needed more listens before I came to the show. But I had heard a lot. Like I've heard it probably nearly 10 times now, but sometimes it takes a while. After that, another Chaz record, Chumbawamba, Pictures of Starving Kids, just edged out of the top 10. That 10th spot was a very hard pick.
That's cool. That's cool.
That's a great record. It's probably my favorite punk record we've done for the show.
Hey, that's awesome. Shout out to Chumbawamba.
Got to give it up for, this is an old one. They Might Be Giants, self-titled. Another one edged just out of the top 10. I love that record, man. It's such a creative, fun record. And like revisiting it over the winter, and I was still thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Yeah, that record is really great. It's one of the ones I've heard from early on in the podcast that stuck with me the most. I realized most of my picks are actually from pretty late in the game. Gotta say, it's just fantastic record, honestly. And so gotta give it for Jamboree, Beat Happening. Record that grew on me after hearing You Turn Me On. Love that record to pieces, and Jamboree only got better. It wasn't top 10 material, but it is just made better by the fact that knowing what they would go on to do, and just gave me a greater appreciation for what they were doing on Jamboree. Last honorable mention, Like Clockworks, Queens of the Stone Age. Great rock record. Awesome. It's pretty popular. That's kind of what kept me from picking it from the top 10. Like seeing how much people love it now, I probably would have heard it eventually. But I still wanted to mention it because I'm glad that the show got me to listen to it, and it was the best guest pick by far. So shout out to Tanner Boyd because it's a great pick. Loved it. And that's all my honorable mentions. Do we have any in common?
No, we don't.
Because a lot of yours were his, so we have no honorable mentions in common across the entire board.
That's crazy. First, I got to shout out Veteran. Like, is clearly the best, by far, industrial experimental hip hop pick of Brian's bunch. Better than,
and it's my favorite of all those records.
It's better
I
than
picked
Death
as well.
Grips. It's better than Clipping.
Oh, that's a lie. It's not better than Powers
I think
to
it's
Be.
better.
It's close though.
Yeah, it's better than Clipping. It's better than Clarence Clarity. Like of that vein. Yeah, I love Veteran. Got to shout out Teletubbies, which by far was like, it's definitely the funniest podcast discussion.
You are the Weezer of this show. You have some takes that are amazing, and you come through with an 8 on Diet Sig. You are Weezer, dude. You need to quit dicking around.
Yeah, in the studio. I got a shout out On the Moon, which by far brought the funniest meme of the show, which Strong 2 didn't read the lyrics.
So has your opinion changed on that album?
I've not revisited it. It's going to be a while before I do. It didn't make the worst list because it's not fair to it. I didn't give it the listens it deserved. I didn't read the lyrics. I will come back to it at some point. So That's why I didn't even consider
So you
putting
just
it on
didn't
the
feel
worst.
right doing it,
Yeah.
essentially. Okay, sure.
That's admirable.
But I gotta shout it out because it's one of like the early best like memorable moments from the show.
In solidarity, I will take down my Miller's Daughter score to a 6. Just to stand in solidarity with you.
Other shout out.
It's symbolic. It's a
Probably
good
the
record.
most solid light 8 I'm thinking of. Bonito Generation. Every other light 8 that I've thought of is not better than this. I listen to this over every Oils.
Oh, I would have
listened to this-
cried if that made your list. I'm
sorry.
gutted that Jacob had heard it before because, man, I'd have loved to blow his mind with that.
Yeah, but just thinking about it, like that is a solid light 8, and it will probably grow. Like that is the big one.
I love Sophie, man.
Gotta shout out You Turn Me On with just how am I been coming back to a lot recently? Bury the Hammer, Godsend. I've been listening to like on repeat, and Teenage Caveman.
Teenage Caveman is great, by the
Oh
way.
my god! And then my final shout out, Gal Costa.
Oh yeah.
Oh, woo! That's the bet. You got fuck off. That's such a good mention. That is a good
I
record.
really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's such a phenomenal
Like
album.
what
I
a
love that one.
surprise pick! I was not expecting the foreign album like that. None of us have heard, with like half the lyrics not even knowing what she's saying. Just, God,
Super
what a
good record.
vibey like.
And that was
floral
when I went-
wallpaper, like kind of. I don't even know how to describe it. Just what a vibey album.
It's wonderful, and the variation on the album is really good.
All right,
Top 10.
the way this is
Nitty-gritty.
gonna work is that
So this time we should round table, like not go through all your 10.
Jacob
We'll
will say
10,
his 10. Brian will say his, and then once we get to our 5 though, that's when we're gonna let loose. And
Oh
just
man,
rave.
I think we could have a brief few words on them. You know, why not?
Well,
just
yeah,
let's
yeah.
just, but like fully indulge the later ones. But I do have a lower spot that's I want to talk about a little bit.
Yeah. All right. I don't know if I'm ready. Kick us off, Jacob.
Go, man.
My number 10 is Macintosh Plus.
Oh, we're gonna, Chaz. This is gonna be a nightmare to edit. We're just peeking all over the place.
Fuck it.
Or is that MC Ryan?
An absolute surprise. This album was very surprising. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I thought that it wasn't going to be the joke that some people made it out to be, but I ended up giving this thing a strong 7.
Has
It's-
it gone up?
No, I mean, it's still like a strong 7.
I was hoping. I was like, light 8?
Heartbreaking. Like, damn it.
I really
Someday.
enjoy this album. I love a good portion of it. Maybe not all of it. I think that it just had a really admirable and kind of subtly ambitious, not in the way that it was made necessarily, but in the way that it subverts certain expectations for how you can or should, quote unquote, make music. I love the ethos behind this album, how it's taking older music and it's recontextualizing it, and not in a way that feels like it's stealing, but just in a way that feels like it's appreciating what came before it, and it's, you know, again, recontextualizing it for a different time and putting its own spin on it. And I found it to just be just enjoyable, just really enjoyable all the way through.
Hell yeah.
Number 10, The Drones. Feeling kind of free.
Ooh, okay.
So there was a time where I thought The Miller's Daughter was better. I've gone down on The Miller's Daughter quite a bit. I was like a strong 8 originally. I'm sitting around maybe a decent 7 now. I still really enjoy the record, but it just Feeling Kind of Free has fluctuated for me a lot, but it's just such a great record. It's carried by some of the highest highs, like Boredom and Tom and Shutter, like truly some really cutting edge songs. And so is the opener. You know, as far as experimental rock goes, I think Garrett Lilliard is
Gary, did you say
or,
Gary?
sorry, did I say his name
Say
wrong?
Gary Lilliard?
No, I said
You
it's
said
Garrett.
Gary
Garrett
Lilliard.
I said it's Garrett Lydiard,
It's
right?
Gareth Lydiard.
Gareth. I said Garrett.
Gary
Sorry.
Lydiard
Gary's killing it.
of the Drones. I don't know if you mentioned the name.
Yeah, I did. But I think he really is pushing forward experimental rock in the most compelling way, even with his Tropical Storm projects. But this record's great, man. I just thought it was the perfect way to start the list because I think all of the records above it I like a lot more, but I thought that one was maybe the baseline of quality to meet.
My number 10 spot is Pictures of Nectar by Fish.
Ooh, cool.
An album, like it was so cool to come back to an album that I hadn't heard by them that totally changed everything I thought I knew about Fish because I haven't heard them in the longest time. Thinking back at the track listing, even the longest songs like Tweezer, I mean, you can't beat it. It's
one of
just,
the best songs we've heard for the show.
It's just a solid album. And thinking about all the other albums that are going to come up this, they are better than that. But I thought of just all the albums that I listed. I was like, which one would I come back to? I mean, I'm going to come back to Pictures of Nectar. What an awesome album.
My number 9 pick is Frank Ocean with Blonde.
Yes.
I thought this was a really, really solid album. I loved a lot of it. I thought that the emotion here was really, really, it was affecting and it was also utilized in a great way. It just, all across the album. There were some phenomenal highs. I can't quite recall the names of particular tracks, but I remember
Like Solo, Nights,
yes,
and
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Nike. Oh man.
Nike.
Nikes, which is an amazing. I remember you calling it Tracker Grower, absolutely right. And
White Limo, I think is another.
no, White Ferrari. But I'm
That's a
thinking
great
of. I'm thinking of. I can't remember it, Chaz. It's our favorite track.
Oh,
Oh no.
are we heathens?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're heathens. But anyway, this album was a great neo soul R&B album.
Self-control.
Yeah.
That's a very good one too. It was just consistently very, very good, and I didn't end up like absolutely adoring it, but all across the board, the quality was so consistent that I had to give it an 8. It was just a really, really strong album.
I thought that was such an important record to hear from this decade for you that I was so surprised you hadn't heard it.
Yeah, I've been behind on Frank Ocean and on like alt R&B and neo soul and stuff like that in general. So this was a really cool one to get to hear.
Number 9, John Prine, Diamonds in the Rough. Grew on me so much. Love this. I think it's above the debut, which I originally gave a 9, but like this record's just, I think it's the one I come back to more. I think his storytelling is so much more compelling than him writing catchy songs. Every song here lands on its feet, not really a wasted moment. Some songs I'm still trying to make heads or tails of or kind of talk, what's he trying to say with this track? Just great, man. I love how it's just guitars pretty much the whole time, and it sounds amazing.
My number 9 pick is Embracism. A album that just, God, I've been hearing Victoria non-stop. What a fantastic song. And the closer, too.
Kieran J. Callanan really does not get enough credit.
He doesn't. And
Absolutely.
This album is...
The underrated episode is like has the highest like of any episode we've done of just records that are going to be mentioned because it was so good. Both of those records you guys picked.
I am just stunned that the time that this album came out and what it was doing and how nobody was talking about it except maybe like one or two like very lesser known internet critics. Like, God, do yourself a favor and go listen to this.
It's a shame. It's a shame.
It's an absolute tragedy.
Shame.
Number 8 for me is Clarence Clarity, No Now.
Yeah! Great record!
This album was a lot to chew on and a lot to swallow, but once I digested it enough, it really, really came through with a lot of really catchy moments, very forward-thinking and interesting production, music that was catchy and off-putting at the same time, a bit long, but when the quality is spread pretty evenly throughout, it's less of a slog than it could have been, and Cancer in the Water is an absolutely beautiful, cathartic moment.
Banger.
Yeah, love that record. Don't want to get off track. Number 8, Jane Siberry, The Walking.
Wow, it's pretty low.
Great record.
It's in the top 10. I mean, we listen to so many good albums.
Yeah,
I'm
and
okay as long as it's somewhere,
This is a great record because the more I listen to it, the better it becomes. I have had favorites change a little bit, but the tracks I've always had problems with, I still kind of have problems with, like Goodbye and Ingrid. But really hard to say a bad thing about it, honestly. It's just so ambitious, and like pretty much all the risks here pay off. The emotional turmoil, but also like the working through it is in a very artistic way is just so compelling. It's really great. I think it's probably going to be Jane's most ambitious work. I don't plan to find anything more ambitious than this record, and I wish it got more praise because really, I think if a lot of music listeners and music nerds were to find this album, I think it would become a lost classic.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Put it perfectly in the podcast episode. If like the internet was around, it would have.
Oh, yeah, it would have absolutely. Yeah, this would like that Weiss Blood record that came out this year is blowing up, and like the same would have happened for The Walking.
My number 8 spot is Tierra Whack World.
Yeah.
I love this record so much. It's 15 minutes. Each track's 1 minute, and they're unforgettable. It's just a solid album from front to back that I could listen to over and over, and it wouldn't even be an hour yet. What a surprising record. I love it so much.
Number 7 for me is an album that has been on my radar for a long time, but I just never had the push to go listen to it, in part because of how intimidating it seemed, and that's Aphex Twin. Selected Ambient Works Volume 2, which it's kind of... I debated about putting it on the list because on one hand, you could maybe consider it a classic. It's a very well-known album. Aphex Twin, very well-known. On the other hand, it was a risky move forcing us to listen to an album that's about 2.5 hours long.
I knew it would be controversial.
And I need to commend you on that move because this is a very, very solid ambient album. It's memorable, and that's the thing that's really cool about it is that despite the fact that it's so long and has so many tracks, when I come back to it, I'm remembering every single track, and just the moods and the atmospheres are very, very well created. And I know you didn't enjoy this one, Brian, but I thought this was, I really, really enjoyed listening to this. And the 3 listens that I gave it before we talked about it, or maybe even 4, were easy. We're easier. It was easier to listen to this album, no matter its length, than some of the other albums that we heard that were a lot shorter than it.
Number 7, Andrew WK, I Get Wet. I mean, it's just hard to gripe. It's just so good front to back. Couple low moments like, maybe Girl's Own Love or She Is Beautiful. But like, other than that, man, I Get Wet's like one of the best songs we've heard for the show. Living in the Red, Party Hard, New York City. Andrew WK is awesome, man. His record from last year is fantastic. And I probably wouldn't have listened to it if I didn't have I Get Wet. And it was such an amazing way to start the show because it was probably the first record that I could honestly say floored me because I was like, this is so quality. It just cemented the show for me. It was like, okay, we have to keep doing this. If I'm going to hear records like this, yeah, let's go.
That's awesome. My number 7 pick is Benji. Benji is just, what is there to say? Lyrically, it's one of the strongest albums we've ever listened to. It still blows my mind, the level of detail in that album. Maybe musically, some of these other albums I've picked I like more, like albums I'll come back to, because Benji's definitely a mood album in my opinion. But God, I Love My Dad, Carissa, Jim Wise, Dogs,
Every track?
Every fucking track is just nearly flawless, if not flawless.
Number 6, Death Grips, Powers That Be. Both albums combined into the double album experience. On the Moon, which we talked about very early on, was extremely ambitious and weird, and I love the idea of an album made mostly of Bjork samples. Just twisted and turned into something totally incomprehensible.
That is not how Bjork sounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that album, but even more than that album, I thought Jenny Death was a really great release. The elements of rock that they're putting into this industrial hip-hop sound was mind-blowing at moments. It really was. On certain tracks, it was absolutely breathtaking. I thought lyrically this album was very strong. The energy throughout was really fantastic.
It's breakneck. It doesn't even slow down until Beyond Alive. And the way those tracks played on GP, which is one of the best, it's the best Death Grips song because it's almost not.
Right. Yeah, I thought that track in particular I really, really, really enjoyed. And I'm putting this on the list even though it's Death Grip. Everybody knows who Death Grips are if you are keeping up with new music and stuff. Mm-hmm. But I really haven't been that much into Death Grips, and I might have taken me a while to get to this album if I hadn't been handed it for this podcast. So yeah, this is number 6, Death Grips, Powers That Be.
Number 6, Pain, Midgets with Guns. Great record, great ska record. I mean, just song for song for song. One of the very few records that was in 9 territory that almost stayed there. I'd say the 9 start at number 5, but I digress. Yeah, I mean, quality song for song. Not really a missed beat on the whole record. It not only shows promise, but it just cements Pain's style. And now I know what a Pain song sounds like, and I know what the best Pain songs are. And pretty much all of them are on Midgets with Guns.
Going through their whole discography was a really, really awesome experience.
It's like the landmark for the show. Getting to interview them.
Dan and...
I mean, really, and Chaz, it was pretty much your best pick because, it's so obscure, but
you guys would have never, ever.
It paid off so well, and no one's heard this record. And way more people should. Not because it's groundbreaking, but because it's just so goddamn quality, front to back.
Especially for the genre.
It really defines our show, honestly. Pain is the band that will define Unwarranted Music Opinions for me. I will remember that for the rest of my life. Getting to talk to them and how good the record was.
How
owning
cool they
a CD,
are as dudes.
owning a CD copy of it and the T-shirt, and having the sticker on my laptop. My only regret is that I didn't keep another sticker to put on a new record player I'll get, because that's where the other one is. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that. My number 6 is The Walking by Jane Siberry. I mean, if Pain defines her show, so does Jane Siberry. Maybe lyrically it's a little too cryptic for my taste. Maybe it's a little long in some parts, but when it's good, it's fantastic. It's my driving album. Of the top 10 here, that is the album I want to listen to while driving, because that's what boosted it up for me to a 9, because it was around an 8, but then I listened to it while driving back from Winchester to come here to do the podcast. It really clicked. man, Why 10th the Rav, Red Heels, The Closer, like, God, there is just not a bad track on this album. I fucking love Jane Siberry.
We're going to turn it right back around with my number 5 with Pain, Midgets with Guns. We just discussed this one, Pain, I am not really into ska music. And when you chose this album, I was worried a little bit.
I remember that me and like Jacob were like, "Oh man,"
We were, and then I remember you hadn't heard it yet, and I messaged you on Steam, and I said, "Hey, Chaz's album is actually pretty good," and it only got better from there. There's the level of detail, and what we've talked about with Pain over and over. What makes them so good was the instrumentation on this album. When they decided to throw in a violin or a keyboard, or whatever else they decided to do.
The horns, everything is so unique. And
very
on
creative.
top of that, the songs are really catchy.
And the lyrics, really, really solid lyrics too. Funny and always sometimes a little pointed where you don't quite expect it. And it hits you in the gut emotionally, sometimes with like One-Legged Girl, when you're not quite expecting it to. Really, really great band. And I think their best album.
Number 5, Beat Happening. You Turn Me On. Great indie record. I mean, pretty much song for song is great. Fantastic maturity for this band. Just great song topics. Some great emotional highs. I don't even know what to say about it. Each song stands out. I would never mistake a song on this record for anyone other than Beat Happening and any other record but You Turn Me On. Yeah, I mean, Jesus, I don't even know how to talk about it. It's just so great.
My number 5 pick is Diamonds in the Rough by John Prine.
Wow.
God damn.
I'm so glad that record is showing up.
Yeah.
It's better than Benji. Like, it's because it has brevity. It's not just depression or bittersweet all the way through. It has fun moments that really break it up. It's tight. It's short. It's consistent. I love how rough his vocals are. I think it's better than the debut for sure. Like, and just lyrically, it's heartbreaking, but it's so down to earth, and just really shows how much of a badass John Prine is as a musician. And it's probably some of the best country music I've ever heard. And I haven't heard a lot. Not as good as 12 Golden Country Greats, but
Piss up a rope or you can ride my ass like with a horse in the saddle. You're up Schitt's Creek with a turd for a paddle. And I'm no dope. Piss up a rope. Well, you can.
we're gonna sing the whole fucking song.
My number 4 was the one album that I am breaking my rule of not having heard it before. I had heard it before,
No fucking way.
but a long time ago, and only very
no.
minimally. It's Buckethead, Colma.
That's my number 4 spot.
Yeah, Buckethead. We mentioned him with Death Cube K, Dreamatorium.
Oh no, our first introduction was Buckethead Land.
And how that was such an unexpected album. Well, Colma, even more unexpected. It's a beautiful ambient acoustic album that is difficult to compare it to other albums just because of how interesting it is. It's basically an ambient record, but there's acoustic guitar melodies and there's soloing, but it's all done in this beautiful atmospheric way, and you have the drum machines that give it its own sort of unique flair.
It's got so much variety, and there's like some very subtle nods to hip hop here, like with some of the bass lines and the way they weigh, especially on like Whitewash. The turntables add so much to some of these songs.
The emotion behind it when you know like who he
Knowing
made
the
it for
context, yeah, it just makes it that much better. Hills of Eternity, Whitewash, For Mom, Watching the Boats with My Dad, Machete, Ghost is one that grew on me so much. Every track here is so quality. Even songs like Wandering and Lone Sal Bug that maybe I wasn't so hot on to begin with, and also Sanctum, have only gotten better. It's just so good. And when I was re-listening to it, I was like, yes, this is absolutely better than You Turn Me On, because it's so much more material in terms of songs and the variation in the songs, but it's just as quality, if not better.
And you're a vocal guy, so that says
It's
a lot.
insane to me
Yeah.
how great this album is. It's entered my best of all time. It was one of the ones on this list that was able to just, as a 9 was able to enter. Like, I was maybe more of a strong A when I first heard, but I would have to give it like a light to decent 9. It's just so good.
Oh man, I'm crying. My number 4 pick is Blonde by Frank Ocean. Just a solid R&B record, front to back. Not a single, maybe like a lyric here or two that I just didn't vibe well with. But God, musically, concept-wise, front to back, it's flawless. You can't find an issue with this album. Even if you try, like, it is just the praise this album got when it came out, and I assume is still getting, like, well-deserved. What a great pick.
We're in the top 3.
This is getting. I'm getting so tense over here. Like my foot is shaking so hard.
A band that I never thought would be in the top 3. Chumbawamba. Pictures of Starving Children Sell Records. Just the title of the album, man. And you were right when you said this was going to be right up my alley. Art punk, new wave, a little bit of anarcho-punk thrown in
Some
there.
post-punk
Some
too.
post-punk
New
in
wave,
there.
like-
It's catchy, but the lyrics are hilarious and political and satirical and so well written. It flows pretty solidly. It's as a whole concept. It's really, really well made as an album. And the highlights here, Unilever. I mean, this is the kind of music I've been getting into for the past few years now.
Well, there's
and
another one for you.
this is right up there. This is an absolutely very solid album. And if anybody out there has listened to Tub Thumping and are like, Chumbawamba, Tub Thumping, whatever, this album from like 1986 is a complete curveball. Like, this is so unexpected and very, very great.
I can't do it. It's too hard. At number 3, Jane Siberry, No Borders Here. One of the best pop records I've ever heard. Okay, so The Walking is more ambitious than this record, but this record has a subtlety to it that is just so great once we talked about it on the show. Not to mention, every song here, save for maybe 2 of them that are a little more abstract and go for less of a catchy direction, are fucking fantastic and completely memorable. The Waitress, Symmetry.
Extra Executives.
Extra Executives
Meet me
is like,
on the fucking beach.
and then we get Map of the World Part 1, which is like this really weird, strange,
Still
artsy
waiting
closer.
for part 2, though, Siberry.
Part 2 is on her 1985 album, The Speckless Sky.
I'm never going to listen to it.
It's amazing. Like, it's so quality. Extra Executives is like an amazing... That like little aside about the grouper fish is what makes Jane so unique. This quirkiness that really only belongs to her and that you hear on The Walking too. And not just, the songs are just so catchy. The themes are fully realized on each one. The instrumentation here is fantastic. Even the more abstract moments like Dancing Class go over so well and just are amazing, like prog pop songs. I mean, I don't even know what to say, but like it's just such a consistent quality pop record that has some underlying themes that once you kind of pick for them and like listen closely, just make the album even better. I'm just sad I didn't get to hear it more because the only way I can hear it is on the vinyl record I own.
My number 3 spot is No Borders Here. I mean, everything Brian said. I mean, it is better than The Walking, in my opinion. It's tighter. It's more consistent. It's more catchy. Some of the best new wave I've ever heard is on No Borders Here. And I've heard a lot, because like new wave in the 80s is like one of my favorite genres. I could listen to that stuff all day. But I like more of the mainstream stuff instead of all the underground, Jacob Lindbergh stuff. But I mean, No Borders Here is fantastic. Meet Me on the Beach, that vocal melody and the verses. Ooh! And Extra Executives is, I mean, it's extra. No,
Oh my god, it's like a colony of earworms.
Gotta mention, I mean, Dancing Class. I know that this is my pick, but man, Dancing Class still is
What a tragic song.
Keep in
incredible.
Yep.
That song.
Pretty much every song.
It's one of the most emotionally gripping songs that I've ever heard, really. All right, we're on number 2.
Oh god.
My number 2 is Caro Caro Bonito
Hey!
with, with Bonito Generation. I pretty much expected to like this album. I'm not sure I expected to like it quite as much as I did. It's so fun. It's so unique. The personality and all of the little moments, like the car sliding in and just the I don't want to
agree.
do anything today.
Hey,
little
guys.
vocal passages. Hilarious, but also emotional at certain points, like on my favorite song.
Graduation.
Like Hey Parents is great. Picture This, I still adore the little synth melody. And it's just the melodies. Like I've mentioned, it's emotion and melody, I think, are the 2 things that I really, really connect to in music a lot of the time. And I just adore the emotion on this album. I think it's infectious, and the melodies are so well written. And the music here, too, is just this wonderful blend of synth pop and a bunch of little different subgenres mixed into it to make just a super, super fun album.
Number 2, Elbow, Seldom Seen Kid. Light 8 when I first heard this record. Forget all that. Amazing record. I mean, fantastic exploration of love in many facets for others, for self, of longing for someone, whether they're gone or still here. the getting caught up in the work aspect of life and leaving behind all these aspects of on songs like Bones View and Tower Crane Driver are just fantastically explored, not only lyrically, but in the sound of the record, which is just grand. And I really think these emotional swells grow on you more and more the more attached you get to the songs. There were some tracks I wasn't so hot on, like towards the latter half. Forget all that. The closer is like just such a great subtle nod. Like I love that little piano that just accents.
Exact piano that I mentioned during the episode that you weren't that hot on.
I just love the way it accents Guy's vocals on that track. And the Love You Mate is like heart-wrenching at this point for me. Yeah, if it weren't for the fix, it'd be a perfect record, honestly. And I actually really dislike that song now, but it doesn't matter. The rest of the record's so quality. It just, like, that one, in my opinion, kind of really low point doesn't really hurt the album all that much. It just keeps it from being perfect, honestly.
Number 2 pick is Iridescence by Brockhampton.
Oh my god, I got both spots, dude. I did it.
I re-listened to 3 albums, technically 4 if you count The Miller's Daughter, to see which one I liked more. And I think I like Iridescence more than No Borders here. Just
wow.
What a fire album.
Oh man.
So many emotional highs, so many great lyrical moments and beat work and just spunk, I guess you'd call it. Like, God, they're having so much fun on these beats, so much more than any of the Sat trilogy, in my opinion. It's just so much fun, and San Marcos is just mind-blowing. It is a record, like, it's some of the best hip-hop I've heard for this show, and if we're talking, like, in this day and age, it's flawless. Like, it is just a great record. Maybe there are a few duds in it, like some of you guys. I like Berlin, I like some of the duds on the record. I just think front to back, like, it's come up to a 10.
Number 1. This is where the 9s start for me.
You bitch.
That's such a good way to
Everything else was an 8. But of course, my 9s are reserved for albums that really grab me emotionally. And this is an album that I didn't give a single 9 out during the episode throughout the whole show. And that's not a way of saying that you didn't choose anything great, but that's just a thing with me personally where it takes a little while for stuff to grow on me to the point where it's a 9 out of 10 and I am just consistently coming back to it, and it's really has a special place for me. And that is an album that grew on me a lot from the time that I first heard it to the time that we recorded the episode, and that has just continued to grow on me ever since then. The Magnetic Fields with Get Lost.
That's fucking tight, man.
That's crazy.
This album, I've said before, the emotion and melodies. The melodies on this album, there are so many little background vocal things going on. So many little synth melodies. So much packed into these songs. And these songs are these like very lo-fi kind of synth pop songs. And I think what really kept me from loving this immediately was I saw the tag synth pop. And I thought, okay, it's going to be a very polished, synth-heavy album. When there are some songs on this that don't really have any synths at all. The Village in the Morning, for example.
Or the Ukulele with Whom to Dance.
Right. But going into this thinking it's a synth-heavy indie pop album, I think really helped me appreciate it more. And Stephen Merritt's vocals have only grown on me more and more and more. I think his vocals on this album are fantastic. I think that the sound of this album, the lo-fi nature to this whole thing, plays in perfectly well with the themes of loss on this album and how sad it is. It's extremely bittersweet, and I really, really like bittersweet music that's kind of might sound happy, but it has a tinge of sadness to it, and that's pretty much throughout this entire album. All the Umbrellas in London is an exceptional song. I love that song from the moment I heard it, but it's only gotten better and better and better. Every song on this album has only gotten better and better and better and better as these melodies have just grown on me. And all of these little things, like I mentioned, synth melodies, there's some bass melodies on this thing. When I give it a detailed listen, I'm hearing stuff going on in the background, and it's all so dreamy and hazy that it kind of obscures it at first, but it gives it this atmosphere that just continually rewards repeated listens. So this thing now, I would say, is like a light to decent 9. I'm just coming back to it. There are moments here that are just emotionally just hit me in the gut, and I absolutely adore this album.
Oh, shit.
Do it. We already know.
Number one, Kieran J. Callanan, Embracism.
So you like bittersweet music, you said. For me, the best kind of music is music that hits that emotional note but acts as an exercise for this just overwhelming anger about non-understanding, and this album just perfectly embodies like sometimes not being able to deal with like really strong emotions any other way but just to in a way exercise that shit. Just get it out of your system. And the way that Kieran explores these topics from various points of views, like on Embrace, on the title track, where he's talking about like toxic masculinity, and the way he just like tackles that, and the way he like each track is so expressive. Like even on the quieter tracks like Scraps and Chardonnay Sean, where he's taking a more reserved approach, or even on Victoria, which is like an outright like glam rock, like glam pop song, like. It's hard to explain how he tackles each topic here, but I think when you listen, and this is the most important thing about this record, when you listen, the visceral experience translates everything for you. And Landslide is like the thesis statement for the record. It's just such a perfect song. And like that right into Love Delay.
Yeah, that's a 1-2 punch that's just...
It's so much. It's so much. You know, it's just such an important record. You know, I think for me... like every time, and Come On USA is like another song that's just amazing.
Stretch It Out.
Stretch It Out is great too. I just love the way he arranges these songs too. They all build so well
Solid
to their
closer,
crescendos.
too. God.
Each crescendo is, even on Halo, like they just build that huge chorus sounds so good because he builds to it so perfectly. Way to War, the same thing. This really weird, strange electronic kind of experimental track, and then we just get this amazing refrain, this amazing way the track plays out, and that's like every song here executed flawlessly while translating these super visceral emotions that are being exercised perfectly by Cal. Like I feel like he really lays everything bare on this record, and it just works so beautifully because it just feels like he's expelling all of these emotions he's been like simmering inside of him, and all of this like internal conflict, or existentialism in a way. I think I can't say enough good things about this record. It's one of the best records I have ever heard, like of all the music I've ever heard. It's a fantastic record. It guts me that this record is not like top 10 of the decade for everyone with a beating heart, because it's just so fucking amazing.
My number one pick for the top 10 is Not for Kids Only by
He did it! Jacob did it!
by nah, just kidding. I love that record, but nah. It's When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go by Billie Eilish.
I cannot believe that is I did not think that record was gonna get a 10.
In all my years, if you were to tell me
20 years old.
if you were to tell me maybe like 2 semesters ago, hey Chaz, so this kind of like emo chick is going to come out with this album, she's kind of edgy, and you're going to give it a 10 and put it on the number 1 spot of, I'd be like, you're fucking stupid. Why would I do that? This album surprised me on all fronts. Lyrically, production-wise, beat-wise, emotion, the sincerity. It is just, I commend artists that just have fun, that have just so much fun and energy when they make their music. And Billie Eilish, like, it's so cool to think, like, she's younger than us. And
17.
she's 17. Like we're going to grow up with her discography. That's so cool to think. But I mean, just looking at the track listing, I re-listened to it, and then I re-listened to No Borders. And I mean, just front to back with Billie Eilish, I just found myself grooving much more. I found myself more connected with her than I was Jane Siberry. No hate on Siberry. No Borders here is fantastic. But just when you look at just how emotional and genuine her delivery, her singing, her lyrics, even if they are a bit cringy, who fucking cares? Like, it's just so... as a musician myself, it warms my heart to see that and see it doing well. God fucking damn it, I love that album so much. I didn't think I would either.
Oh, I did it.
Gentlemen, this has been a fantastic experience, and I'm so happy we did it.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Like, the records we have found on this show, are just incredible. Like, they're some of the best music I've ever heard and will probably remain some of the best music I've ever heard. Man, holy cow, we're done.
Yeah, this is it. This is the final episode. This has been
I
our
don't think of any other memes I could,
retrospective.
or shit posts I could do, but
Yeah.
no, I think I've shit posted my last shit post for this fucking podcast.
Yeah, this has been Unwarranted Music Opinions. I'm Jacob Lindberg.
be unwarranted music.
It will be. I'm Jacob Lindberg, and I was here with Chaz Jenkins.
Hey.
And Brian Courtney.
Hey.
Force your friends to listen to some albums.
Play us out, Chaz.